everyone and welcome back to my channel. It is the gloomiest of days. If you can hear the rain at any point in this video, I'm kind of sorry, but also, is there a better vibe for wanting to talk about books than hearing the downpour of rain? And I'm talking like heavy rain going on behind this camera. Let me see if I can show you. Heavy rain. I'm here to talk about the last 2 months worth of reading that I've done because I didn't do a wrap up for May. I don't really recall why, but I thought screw it, let's do May and June in one video. So I've got 9 books to talk about in this video with you. Let's just jump straight into it. First book I want to talk to you guys about is Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This is, I believe, at the moment, her only YA that she has done, and it's my favourite book from her so far. I gave this 4.5 stars. I just loved everything about it, to be honest. I think it just didn't give me that 5-star feeling, which is why it wasn't a 5-star, but I ate this up. I ate this up so quickly. I loved the characters that we meet. I loved Mallory. I loved, what's his name? Nolan. I also loved Mallory's friends and that kind of just found family element of the chess world that you got from this book. And I loved the chess. Like, yes, there was a lot of chess in it. I mean, I feel like to go into a book called Check and Mate that literally looks like this on the cover, you'd be foolish to think the chess wouldn't be a pivotal part of the book. It really is. It is a massive part of this book, but it's not done in a way that's really technical, boring, tedious to read. It made it, for me, really entertaining and explained things in a way that was easy to understand, but also still used a lot of like chess jargon, mentioned more technical elements of the game, but again, in a way that just kind of added credibility to the story, made it a bit more immersive, made you seriously feel like you are in the middle of like a chess tournament, I guess. So it's literally about Mallory, who used to play chess and she used to be really good at it growing up, and then something happens within her family that kind of just leads her to make the decision that she's going to stop playing. But now her family is struggling financially, and suddenly there is an opportunity for Mallory to play chess for, I guess, like a kind of organisation and potentially win large amounts of money to win these chess tournaments. Alongside that though, Mallory meets Nolan, who is one of the best chess players, I believe, in the world. He's a current world champion, yeah. The bad boy of chess, he is described as, and they have kind of like a rivals to lovers kind of situation. Oh, it was just so good. It was witty as well. Like, I loved her YA writing. It wasn't cringy, but it was just really fun to read, and it made me laugh and smile and just, yeah, it took me back a few years. And I love that. That's a really nice feeling when a book can really just transport you back to your sort of young adult years. I loved it. I haven't really got a bad word to say about this book, but yeah, it just wasn't a 5-star. It just didn't give me that feeling. I wasn't like completely and utterly in love with it, but I had the best time reading this. The next book was actually an ARC. It is out now, but when I was reading it, it hadn't been properly published yet. And I read it on my Kindle, and that is Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. This was not a favourite of mine. It's actually the first ARC I've ever received that I didn't enjoy, and that felt really wrong for me, and it made me feel bad, but ultimately you just gotta be honest, I guess. This was a cozy fantasy. It kind of gives off very similar vibes initially as Legends and Lattes, but instead of a coffee shop, the 2 main characters are opening up well, it's kind of like half bookshop, half cafe, I suppose. To be honest, I don't remember a great deal about this book now because I read this towards the beginning of May, but I gave it 2.5 stars, potentially reflection, probably more like a 2. There were a couple of chapters and parts of the book that I started to feel a bit more interested in and enjoy a bit more, but ultimately it just wasn't giving cozy fantasy. I think ultimately, really, this book maybe was marketed wrong. Maybe my expectations, I think, were probably completely different to what we actually got in the book. But I feel like Travis did such a good job with Legends and Lattes, and it really was ultimate cozy fantasy vibes. It literally felt like I was playing like a video game with levels and upgrading my little cafe, like that, just those cozy times, you know, when you're playing those like phone games. Whereas this was like meant to be cozy fantasy, but the stakes were actually mega high. It all felt just a bit random. It didn't really flow very well. The story took really random, sharp turns out of nowhere. And again, a lot of those sharp turns were like involving pretty high stakes situations. And I'm like, this just is not a cozy fantasy at like in the slightest. Like I'm pretty sure there's like an assassination attempt made on the main characters. I'm just like, sorry. And the battles and yeah, it was a bit bizarre. I also just didn't really connect to the two main characters. They're very like in love and it's really sweet, but you never really get a chance to form a connection to them because you don't ever really get to know them. And I feel like in a cozy fantasy, again, because not a lot's happening in the plot normally, you then get more time to kind of connect with your characters, learn a lot about them, their backstories, and just get to have a fun time with them throughout the book. But I just didn't really get that because their backstory was never explained. I couldn't really tell you anything about their relationship, about them two as individuals, like nothing. It was just, yeah. The next book that I read definitely was not a cozy fantasy, and that is aaire by Sarah J Maas, the third or fourth book in the series, I think, depending on how you're choosing to read it. Or is it just the fourth? Honestly, I get so confused with the reading orders that are now available, but for me, it was the fourth book in the series. And I would just say at the time of reading it, it was my favourite Throne of Glass book. I gave this 4.5 stars. This is where things really pick up. You kind of finished, or at least for me, I finished Crown of Midnight and was like, okay, like the story is actually starting now. You meet so many more characters in this book, so much more of the lore is explained, and you start to understand a lot more how the magic system works, how the kingdom has been operating and why. The main character is really starting to discover more about herself in this book. Obviously, I can't really explain to you what happens in this book because it would be a spoiler. So we can't really talk about it too much, but yeah, I just loved meeting all the new characters and feeling like this is where this story truly begins and where we're gonna start seeing some major plot developments. And yeah, I really did enjoy this one. Then we move on to another disappointment of the last 2 months, and I actually really shouldn't have this book because I was meant to return it like a good week ago, so I'm gonna owe my library quite a lot of money. But that is True Love at Lonely Hearts Bookshop. I read this during my finishing all my library holds video, if you'd like to watch that to see a more in-depth reading experience. But this, I hated this. I gave it 2 stars because there was some parts where I was kind of enjoying myself, but should it be less than that? I don't know. It just made me so angry, like so angry. It made literally no sense. I think the one saving grace of this book, and probably why I didn't give it a 1 star, is the fact that the vibes were good, what I wanted out of it, because it was very summery. There was like barbecues and garden parties and like weddings and things, and I was like, okay, cool, yeah, we love that because it's summer. Not that it looks like it right now, but everything else about this book was just so wrong. It's about a woman called Verity, and she is quite content, honestly, in her single life. She's introverted, but her friends and people around her are putting so much pressure on her to have a boyfriend. So up until this point, she's just kind of pretended that she has. But one night, her friends actually follow her when she's going out to see her boyfriend. And Verity notices this. So she's like, well, shit, I'm not actually going to see anybody because I don't have a boyfriend. So she kind of just sits down in a restaurant with some random guy and starts talking to him and pretending that he is her boyfriend. And it kind of goes from there. They kind of have like a fake dating relationship. They take each other to different events so that people around them think that they're in a relationship. Johnny, who is the male main character in this book, is a bad person, like such a bad person. I literally hated him. He treated Verity awfully. He was just so emotionally unavailable, wouldn't admit it, was dragging her through it, making her catch feelings, leading her on, and just being an idiot. Like literally an idiot. But then the ending was infuriating. I won't really go into detail, but it was just so, it just literally made no sense. I would also like to say that, like, if you saw this book on a shelf, would you or would you not just think like cute, fluffy romance? Like, look at the cover, the title. Okay, this honestly is not a romance, because whilst the 2 main characters are like fake dating, the majority of what takes place in this book has nothing to do with their relationship. There's like no relationship development, there's no chemistry, nothing like that. It's kind of almost more like women's fiction to me if it had to come under a genre. Again, still wouldn't be a great women's fiction based on how it ends, because it literally goes against everything that I feel like it means to be a strong, independent woman, whatever, I don't know. But this just really did not hit for me. I would not recommend it, unfortunately, but I mean, go for it if you think it might appeal to you. All I would say is don't expect a romance going into this, and you may or may not hate the main male character. Then we move on. I think I actually read this book before that book, but never mind. I also read The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer, and I love this book. This is a really fun time. I rated it 4 stars. And it was just giving Caraval, Inheritance Games, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, all of these things combined, and I feel like The Wishing Game is the product of that. It was the most magical, whimsical, cozy time. I loved it. It's about a woman called Lucy. She works at a nursery or kindergarten, wherever you're from, and she has this boy that he's not like just his teacher, she's kind of, they have a bit of a past, and she essentially wants to adopt this little boy, but her life, she's just not financially ready, and there's a lot of things kind of going wrong in her life, but they both, her and the child, share a love for this author. I've forgotten his name, but he writes these really amazing children's books. They're really popular, and he's kind of been MIA for a while, and all of a sudden he comes out with an exclusive 1 copy book that he's recently written, and essentially people can compete in a competition to win this book. So Lucy is, I think she's contacted. I think they have to be contacted, and basically she goes to this island with the other contestants where the author is, and they have to basically just compete in a series of trials or contests, whatever you want to call it, to win this book at the end of it. And for her, that's a big deal because it's literally the only copy in existence of his brand new book, so she can like sell that, be financially ready, adopt the child. You know, that's her kind of motive here. So it was really emotional because there was just so much like depth to it about obviously her dream of having this child, and the nostalgia of it almost made it emotional. I feel like I connected on a slightly deeper level because I used to work at a nursery, so I know what it's like to sort of form connections to children's, and there was just a couple of like references about working as like a nursery teacher, and that just kind of obviously helped me relate a bit more, because whilst I don't do that anymore as a job, it was so rewarding and you just met so many precious souls in that job. So yeah, that was obviously just a nice little element for me. But also like just the writing, I saw a few people critique the writing because this book, I believe, it's just like a fiction book. It's not specifically like a YA. A lot of people said that the writing felt a bit YA, and that was more of a critique. For me, I agree. There were definitely parts of this book that felt YA, but they almost made the story flow better, and it kind of made sense because I feel like the book was literally trying to make you feel nostalgic and bring you back to your childlike self. And so the YA writing for me was almost clever. The only ick I remember having from this book was like a very minor romantic subplot, and it was like a crazy age gap subplot. It just made me feel a bit uncomfortable, so I wasn't a fan of that. And it started to become slowly a bit more prominent towards the end, and then the book ended and I was like, okay, phew, because I think that I would have struggled to read that. Other than that, I'd really recommend this book. I had the best time with it. It was so fun, just so whimsical. Definitely a good one for the autumn, I think, if you wanted to wait a couple more months until the autumn, or if you're Southern Hemisphere, give it a go now, because I feel like it'd be the perfect time for you. Then we move on to Powerful by Lauren Roberts. Novella in her, I don't know if they're actually the name of the series or is it just the Powerless series? I'm not sure. Reckless is actually already out as I'm filming this. I tried to get a copy from my local works yesterday and they didn't have it, which was so sad. So I'm gonna have to try again another time. I read Powerful in preparation for that because by the time I was reading this, it was only like a month away. And I loved this. I gave this 3.75 stars. Obviously it's a little novella. It was only, I think, just over 200. Sprayed edges are stunning, but I don't know if you can tell because of the sprayed edges, but I did actually tab a lot of this book because there were so many amazing quotes. I loved Adina as a main character, like just what a ray of sunshine. She was just, yeah, like sunshine personified, and I loved her character. We also meet, is it Mac in this book, which is kind of like her love interest, who I also really liked. He was like kind of a grumpy, but also kind of not. He had a very similar aura to Kai, to be fair, I feel like. Obviously, because it's a shorter book, the romance developed a bit quicker, but it didn't feel rushed to me. Like, it really didn't. I thought this was really well written and fleshed out regardless of being a shorter book, and for me the romance still took an appropriate time to develop, so I don't have any complaints about that. It was just so interesting seeing the events from Powerless take place in a different character's perspective and timeline, and it just gave you a couple more little like Easter eggs and insights, I suppose, to what was going on at the same time that Payden was taking part in the trials. There's definitely things within this book that I feel like we're going to see moving forward. So if you were wondering, do I have to read the novella to read Reckless? I mean, I haven't read Reckless yet, so I can't tell you 100%, but I reckon that there are definitely things that happen in this book that are going to be significant to Reckless. So I would really recommend that you read this, because as well, it was just a good book. Like, it was a good time, and it's short, great for getting out of a reading slump, or I don't know, just if you've read Powerless and feeling a bit uninspired, like, just pick this up, because surely you enjoyed Powerless anyway, like, surely. The next book I read was another Ali Hazelwood, and I read Love Theoretically. This was the second STEM romance by her that I've read. I read The Love Hypothesis last year, and I liked it. I think I gave it like a 4-star or something. Maybe could have given it less than that, I'm not sure. Looking back, I don't really remember a lot about it. I really wasn't obsessed with it. I really didn't get the hype around Adam. It was still a good time. Like, it was a good, easy read, and this is one of the products of my dogs choosing my reads, so I didn't actually pick this up specifically, but I knew I wanted to get to it eventually. It's been on my shelf for ages. And I enjoyed this more than The Love Hypothesis, so I was very glad that I did pick it up. It follows Elsie, who is currently earning money as a fake dater. She's also doing a teaching job and like tutoring and things, but her dream is to be a proper physician. Is that correct? Theoretical physicist. Okay, there we go. A theoretical physicist is her dream. Elsie has an opportunity to work her dream job, and she's going through sort of like an interview process. However, she realizes that the brother of the boy she's fake dating works for this kind of organization, and he's an experimental physicist, which experimental physicists and theoretical physicists historically don't get on. And so there's like an enemies to lovers situation going on here, because Elsie obviously has to have communications with Jack while she's doing the interview process. So I loved Jack as a character. He had just the perfect amount of like banter and like arrogance, but also being very caring towards Elsie. It's definitely a micro trope in here of like more illness acts of service. You know, when the boy takes care of the girl when she's not well, I eat that up every time, and there was quite a bit of that in this, so loved that. But yeah, for some reason, like, it is kind of phased out of my memory, but I did really enjoy this. I don't know if I'd said, but I rated this a 4.25 star. There's really not a lot specifically to say about it. I just loved them two as a couple, and I loved their relationship development. It was quite a slow burn. It's not a massively long book, but I feel like it took a long time for the relationship to fully develop. But I enjoyed the entire process of that. I enjoyed the spice that Ali Hazelwood wrote in this book. I've touched on it briefly before. I just feel like she handles spice in such a mature and healthy way. It's not overdone and cringy. It's not portrayed unrealistically. I think she just does it really well. And yeah, I just thought it was a really solid plot. It was interesting, insightful, because very scientific still, but again, not in a way that was boring. I do sometimes struggle at the beginning to like really wrap my head around the writing and the phrases and the scientific jargon that she kind of uses, but after a few chapters I kind of start to catch on. But yeah, I'd really recommend this if you're looking for a new romance to read. This book was kind of a disappointment for me, which was really sad, and that is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I had so many high expectations for this. There's certain booktubers that really love it, so I was like, okay, it's gonna be for me, I'm gonna love it. And I just really didn't. I've given this a 2.75 star. I don't hate it, and I think I will continue the series, but it just didn't live up to my expectations. I feel like it had a really strong start. The first chapter especially, I was like, holy shit, like this is gonna be intense, right? And then I just read the whole rest of it and I was just really underwhelmed. And then the ending, again, I was like, holy shit, what a interesting plot development. What a good cliffhanger. What's gonna happen next? Makes me wanna read the next book. But everything in between just fell so flat for me. I can't put my finger on it specifically. I never have been able to. I don't know if it's the pacing. I don't know if the pacing was off, because the stakes in this were extremely high and there was a couple of really crazy chapters where like shit was seriously going down, but it didn't stop me in my tracks. It didn't make me really like it didn't keep me on the edge of my seat even though crazy things were happening, because I feel like it just didn't flow properly, or also struggled to connect to some of the characters. Whilst I enjoyed Jude as the main character, I also feel like I don't really know anything about her other than the traumatic start to her life in this book. Her sisters, again, I quite enjoyed their dynamics as sisters, but as individuals and as actual characters, I just don't really have any feelings towards them. I also feel like there is so much hype about a romance within this book. Where is it? Where is the romance? I didn't see no romance. That was a bit disappointing. Do not expect a romantasy going into this. This is not a romantasy. I'm gonna read the second book. I've heard the second book is better and we'll assess from there, but this was not what I was expecting and it kind of sucks. Then I found my first 5-star in months, and I just have so many amazing things to say about this book, and that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I mean, look at the tabs for a start. I just could not put this book down, put the tabs down, switch off from it. It was just actual perfection. And this is the first Emily Henry book that I've rated 5 stars. I have enjoyed all of her other books, but none of them hit quite like this did. I connected to Harriet, our main character, so much, like so much. It was actually quite emotional sometimes reading her thoughts or the things that she was saying to the other characters, and I was like, oh my god, that is literally me. Like, I feel so seen, and just it meant a lot. Follows our 2 characters, Harriet and Wynne. They were engaged, but they broke off their engagement and have kind of gone their separate ways for a few months. However, their friendship group every year organise a little like summery trip to a holiday home, and they spend like a week there, and so naturally they've invited all their friends, including Harriet and Wynne, but their friends don't know that Harriet and Wynne are no longer together. Harriet and Wynne don't want to tell them that, so they spend the week pretending that they're still engaged and in a relationship. And that is the premise of this book, but it is so much more than that. The struggles that the characters go through individually had so much emotional depth and complexity to it, and was just described and portrayed in a way that was just so relatable and sort of refreshing to see represented in a book. The found family between this friendship group, there's 3 different romantic couples within the friendship group, and one, again, it kind of was a bit relatable to me because my friendship group is literally just a bunch of couples. Love that. But I am just such a sucker for found family. It's definitely one of my favorite book tropes ever, and this did it really well. But like I say, I tabbed so much in this book, and some of the quotes, like, I would literally be here forever if I was trying to read out all my favorites to you, but I feel the moment his gaze lifts off me and returns to the windshield, but he's left a mark. From now on, dark cliffs, wind racing through hair, cinnamon paired with clove and pine, all of it will only mean Wynne Connor to me. A door has opened and I know I'll never get it shut again. And then I met you and I didn't feel so lost or aimless, because even if there was nothing else for me, it felt like loving you was what I was made for. And it didn't matter what anyone thought of me. It didn't matter if I didn't have any other big plans for myself, as long as I got to love you. Oh my god, these two are endgame. They are together in every single parallel universe. We'll leave it at that. I'm obsessed with this book. And then the last book, the 10th book, technically I finished it in July, but I read the majority of it in June, so I'm going to include it. Hey, I had 2 back-to-back 5-star reads. I've only just realised that. Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas. I just finished this a couple of days ago, and yeah, this is the best book for me in the Throne of Glass series so far. Again, can't really say a lot about it. It would be a big spoiler, but it's just one of those books in a fantasy series where you've met a lot of characters by this point. They're kind of all doing their separate things, and you're waiting for their stories and their paths to just connect and cross. And this is that book. This is that book where all the different characters and different storylines that you've been following along for the last 1 or 2 or however many books finally collide and come together. And it was just so epic. It was just it was incredible. For the first half of the book, I wasn't sure how, I was enjoying it, but I was like, I feel like everyone loves this book, but I just feel like I'm not getting that. The second part of the book, I understand, I understand, I'm on board. I get it. I absolutely 100% get it. Yeah, I mean, if we were going in with spoilers, yeah, I could talk about this book for a while, but we're not doing that. So all you need to know, I loved it. Second 5-star read of the last 2 months, and tandem read is next, and I'm scared. I'm scared, but this book ended like well, I suppose. Like, it ended well, but it ended with like a lot of hope in your heart, but also like shit ain't over yet, you know? Oh God, it was so good. Those are the 10 books that I have read in the last couple of months. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've read any of these recently, your thoughts on them, if you agree with my thoughts or disagree. I would love to know. There's nothing I love more than a good book discussion. So please jump down in the comments and we can start a little chat. But other than that, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you'd like some more bookish content. I've got a few more bookish videos planned on the way soon, so keep your eyes peeled for those. But yeah, I'll catch you next week with a brand new video. Bye friends.